pleasure to welcome Professor Susheela Kaushik, former Director, Center for Women Studies, Delhi University, co-chair UGC Capacity Building Program for Women Managers in Higher Education, who is the resource person of this third-day webinar of the one-week gender sensitization program on understanding social structure and gender, towards the topic on gender equality and in Indian Constitution, being organized by Women Studies Center, Madurai, Kamaraj University, Madurai, and Department of Women Studies, Bharathidasan University, Susheela, in collaboration with University Grants Commission, New Delhi. Professor Susheela Kaushik is a former professor of political science and director of Women Studies at Delhi University. She has a teaching experience of 40 years. She was the founder director of Women Studies and Development Center, Delhi University. She has been member and co-chairperson of the consultative committee on the UGC scheme on capacity building program for women managers in higher education. She has been a member and chairperson of many committees of UGC and NAC, the joint secretary and general secretary of Indian Associations of Women Studies. She has been the president of an NGO called Center for Development Studies and Action, New Delhi. She has been traveled widely as guest and visiting lecturer in various universities of Canada under Sastri Indo-Canadian program. She has been a social activist and participated as an NGO in the UN conferences on women and human rights in 1993 and 2000. She has attended various regional conferences on Beijing at South Asia, Kathmandu, South Asia, Bangkok, and the NGOs conference at Seoul. She has attended and has been the key speaker on India of the FAS sponsored seminars at Bonn, Bangkok, Colombo, Kathmandu, Lahore, etc. Main theme in these workshops have been on women in politics in Asia and India, women in local governance in South Asia and India, gender budgeting, etc. She has been a member of quite a few regional and global outfits and networks, particularly South and Southeast Asia. She is the author of a number of books, articles, and papers presented at various workshops, seminars. The special areas of interest and scholarship have been international relations, political science, Indian politics, women in politics, Panchayat Raj, and women, girl children, and women's studies in general. She has organized a good number of seminars and training workshops on these themes. I warmly welcome all the participants who are eagerly waiting for this wonderful session. I once again welcome you, ma'am, for this session. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Radhika. Thanks for those nice long words for me.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Can we start now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please, ma'am.
Okay. I'm very happy the two universities have joined up together. The two women's study centers have joined up together to organize a workshop on whatever is the theme. This time it's the Constitution. But even otherwise, this sort of a venture of joining up, collaborating and organizing a workshop has been new. Whatever else we like or dislike about Corona, the one good advantage which Corona has done it is to bring all of us from all over India and the world perhaps together in the form of these webinars. Once upon a time, people used to hesitate to either invite or travel from one place to another because of lack of money. Particularly UGC had for a long time now has not been able to finance any one of us and not meet anybody. Many of us have not met anyone for each other for quite some time or heard anyone or in any of these workshops. So Corona has made it possible for all of us by its own evil intentions, but still. And the UGC and others, by having this webinar, has been able to bring us together. I'm extremely thankful to Mani Meglai and Radhika, who have taken this opportunity to organize this almost a refresher program, 7 days refresher program on gender studies. Because this has been for the past 2 years lying dormant especially women's studies as such, ever since the big project, huge project of UGC, namely capacity building for women managers in higher education, has come to almost a stop, if not an end, few years back. That is as it may. Let's now start in the topic of gender sensitization. But in gender sensitization, then there are various aspects. So this particular lecture today is on the political aspect of gender equality. And I'm very happy for the first time political structures have been included into the social structures, because normally when we talk about it, it's usually social reconstruction or social interaction or something of that nature, socialization, things like that. This is the first time almost a constitution has been brought out as a part of sensitization. I'm finding it particularly very happy because I'm a political science teacher basically, and I worked a lot for the past 40 years on various themes of political science. That political science, and more importantly, constitution, is becoming the center of our discussions. Normally, what happens is these topics are left to the political scientists, and we believe that women's studies have nothing to do with this, or at the most only marginally something to do with this. But this is the first time that it's emerging in the center of things and connecting itself. Thereby, we are mainstreaming political science and constitution, or we are mainstreaming gender studies into the other one and integrating it with other social science subjects. So to take with this constitution and why we want to take it up today is, before we start, what is a constitution? Because I suspect many of us who are attending this workshop may not be really political science persons. They may come from various subjects, various activities in life, and may know what is constitution, but may not know exactly what it deals with. So the constitution I considered for a long time as the center of what we are doing, the center of our living. This is the most important aspect because we are all citizens of this nation called India. And we have to know what is the constitution because it's the most fundamental document in our political and social life as such. Of late, the constitution is getting even more importance, gaining in its significance in every aspect of our life as such. So I really would like to know what the constitution as the relationship between, start with, state and the individual. Individual as citizen and state as the important institution in the country, the relationship between the two, it's the constitution which really defines it and also gives a limitation to it. Second thing about the constitution, it talks about the relationship between the state and the society, the state and the various groups in the society. Many of us who may be involved with either the universities or NGOs know jolly well that there is a very intimate relationship between the state and the various groups. The constitution clearly tells us where we belong to in the state and what are the limitations or freedoms we have in this relationship. The third way in which it is the society and the individual. We all belong to various social groups. We all belong social categories. And what exactly, and to deal with these various social categories and how far the individual is free within them and where are the limitations in it and how exactly to finally grant the various rights of the individual vis-a-vis the state, vis-a-vis the society, vis-a-vis the groups, and above all, between one individual and another individual. So from the point of view of individual, from the point of view of the groups we belong to, from the point of view of the state of which we are all citizens, I think Constitution is extremely fundamental document. It's the foundation document of the Indian state as such. Now, why I am saying all this in a gender studies workshop is, for a long time, the gender really ignored the Constitution. Some of them even openly oppose the Indian constitution by saying that, we'll see it, there's a lot of truth in it, and I agree with that, is it's a highly patriarchal institution, that it is anti-gender or it has nothing to do with gender. And all of us believe we are citizens of the country, but nothing more. With the result, we ignored the constitution. We didn't oppose the constitution, not all of us, but we ignored the constitution and we moved on, particularly the NGOs and social activists. We began working with the society and not with the constitution. We worried about the society and the individual. We operated in the social context. We operated as social activists, but forgot that is behind all of them, there is a constitution. But now, of late especially, a lot of issues have come up before us, especially with the gender people. And these issues are now coming up in the context of what the Constitution is allowing us, or where the Constitution is putting a limit to us, to the gender interests, and gender studies. With the result, many of us have begun now reading the Constitution or quoting the Constitution or citing it whenever we want to take up an issue. So let us see exactly what the Constitution says for us and what are the important portions in the constitutional structure from the point of view of gender equality or as such as gender issues. The Constitution is a huge document, one of the longest constitutions in the world, one of the longest written constitution in the world, not too rigid, not too flexible. It's a sort of some portions are rigid and some portions are flexible. Some can be easily amended. Some cannot be amended so easily, but takes a lot of time and requirements. But out of all of them, to us as gender specialists, there are three aspects of, or as citizens of the country, that there are three aspects which are very, very important because they contain the values of the Constitution. They tell us the basic concepts and values of the Constitution, but they also become the foundation stone for us as citizens and our lives. These three portions are, to start with, preamble of the Constitution, fundamental rights of the Constitution, and the directive principles of the state policy. All the others give a lot of description, structure, and other things. But these three portions give us our values as a citizen, as a democratic republic, or as the state of its sovereignty. So the preamble itself of the Constitution says, it starts as, we the people of India solemnly pledge to have the four important values, that is equality, liberty, freedom, and secularism, and after 1976, socialism. These are the five very, very important values which preamble talks about and says it's we the people of India give ourselves this. So it is something which we are guaranteed to ourselves from the very beginning and forms the basis for the rest of the Constitution. So the very first portion of the Constitution, namely preamble, talks about equality and freedom. That equality should automatically be the gender equality too, because the Constitution, when it says the people of India, includes men and women. Or now with other types of genders coming up, all the various types of gender will come under this we, the people. We, the people, is extremely important. And also those who so far may not have been included, namely children. We all used to say that children are not included because they are not citizens. Till the age they become 18, they are not adults and so they are not citizens. They don't have a right to vote. But no, that's not right. Man, woman, children, one way. And then the other transgenders which are all there. And they're all included when we talk in terms we the people. With the result, the gender equality gets included into it. In the fundamental rights, again, this other very, very important one, which is the cornerstone in a way of our Constitution. There are about 32 fundamental rights which the Constitution talks in terms of, and made all of them applicable to the citizens of this country, the people of this country, out of which they are all in general terms called the various types of rights, from starting with the fundamental right to freedom, free movement, free speech, and free organization, plus going further to talk in terms of the right to live, right to livelihood, now added up right to education. And so we have about 32 rights which have gone into the Constitution as our rights. Now, these rights are for all of us. The very first one says the rights are applicable to all Indians without any discrimination on the basis of caste, class, or sex. It says very clearly, without any discrimination on the basis of caste, class, and sex. So the gender equality is mentioned in the very, very beginning as something which is given in the Constitution as a fundamental value of this country, or a fundamental institution of this country. And the important portion about the fundamental rights is these are not merely just fundamental, but these cannot be revoked or these can be violated or infringed upon. If there is anything anybody feels his or her rights are being violated, she can go to the court and the court will guarantee these rights, which means these rights are justiciable. These rights can be taken to the court, and the courts are bound to recognize and give the fundamental rights, adjudicate on it, so that this, because without it, there is no constitution, there is no democracy, there's no sovereignty, there is no other political value which governs the entire state of India. So this is the most important aspect of the Constitution, namely it has given us 32 rights. It can add more, like this right to freedom, right to education was given only recently to us, added on to it. Otherwise, it only remained as a right, but not as a fundamental right. There was an important right, which was a fundamental right, which has been removed and then put as an ordinary right, that is the right to property. Originally, right to property was part of the fundamental right, but now it has become one of the important rights as such. This has a lot of political, economic, and other factors behind it. Now, the third important portion is directive principles of state policy. The directive principles of state policy, even though it is not guaranteed by the Supreme Court, even though the Constitution does not give us the same value and the importance, strength as fundamental rights get it, because it is not justiciable. You can go to the court on directive principles of the state policy. The court also can take it up, but it is not guaranteed by them the same way as fundamental rights is guaranteed. Doesn't matter. But for that reason, it's not that the directive principles of state policy are not important. Why it is considered as important is, during the course of the Constituent Assembly's proceedings, when they were formulating the Constitution of India, lots of ideas came up. In fact, lots of socialistic welfarist ideas came up. Lots of values came up, like equality, but which could not be accommodated in the Constitution because they were controversial. There are many for and many against these ones. So now some of these things could not become our fundamental rights because there were two opinions on that. But what they did was not leave it out for that reason, but include it into the, the directive principles of state policy. Once the directive state policy mentions in the Constitution, it becomes very, very important. Some of the important things which of relevance to us, women, gender, is the Uniform Civil Code. The Uniform Civil Code was one which was hotly debated in the Constituent Assembly, but there were a lot of people who were not agreeing to put the Uniform Civil Code as a part of the main Constitution or as a right to the women. So with the result, it had to be accommodated by them as the directive principles of state policy. There are right to education, right to work, right to ban child labor. All these things were part of our fundamental of the directive principles of state policy, mainly because they could not be agreed upon by everyone in the Constituent Assembly. Many believed it's not possible to do it at all. What is the importance of directive principles of state policy then? It is not merely it included in the constitution, that's important, but it also has been put there saying the central government to start with may not be able to make them enforce them as rights. But because there are difference of opinion, difference of culture, difference of religion, difference of ethnic realities, which cannot be made into one uniform law in the form of a central constitution. It has to be done by the various states, and because India basically is a pluralistic society, pluralistic religion, pluralistic culture, pluralistic caste, very, very pluralistic traditions. More than anything else, historically pluralistic traditions. We all came from various historical backgrounds, so it has to be accommodated. With the result, instead of doing it as one centralized rule or order, this has been left to the states to do it. So any state can take it up and do it. So it's called directive principles of state policy. It's put in the domain of the state to enforce them. And they can make a law, they can make a policy, they can make a act, but it is within the state premises. So this is not that it is not justiciable completely, but you cannot take that as a principle and go before the Supreme Court and say this is not done. It can be done only by the state governments as a principle. So this principle is valid, principle is valuable, and over a period of 40, 70 years, which we are now, the Supreme Court has very often utilized these directive principles of state policy in giving various judgments. And the government and the administration, central administration or the state governments and their administration have utilized the directive principles of state policy to enact a whole lot of measures. For instance, Article 15A in the directive principles of state policy talks about nothing in this constitution will prevent a state from undertaking any measure for the promotion of the good of women and children. This is the exact sentence which is there in the constitution. But this is only under the directive principles of state policy, not under the fundamental rights. So with the result, the government has utilized it over a period of time to make a lot of policies, social welfare policies, a lot of gender-oriented policies for the sake of children and women. Gender and children have benefited essentially from this. So that's why you have child labor abolition, you have right to education for children, and you have many other reforms coming up, laws and activities coming up for women in promoting women's welfare and rights in over the period of time in India. So it's not that directive principles are not important. One of the directive principles we have is Uniform Civil Code. Uniform Civil Code, since it could not be accommodated as a fundamental right, has been not left out of the Constitution, but included in the directive principles of state policy, because India is a plurality of religion, and we have a lot of religions and the other traditions in our country where we cannot perhaps put one law for all the women, one law for all the people in the country, irrespective of which religion they belong to or what religious codes they have to follow as such. In the process, a strange contradiction came up in India in many ways. One is the untouchability is another one in this directive principle. One is the contradiction between the fundamental rights and directive principles. That was the biggest contradiction came up, particularly Uniform Civil Code. Because all the fundamental rights talk about the right to religion, right to propagate religion, right to follow the religion, right to follow the various codes of the religion. If this has been given as a fundamental right, which means all the states will have to follow it, and the judiciary, Supreme Court, will have to follow this. If that is the way it is, you cannot put the Uniform Civil Code also as a fundamental right, because in India, we don't have one religion and one way about the various issues like private property, adoption, marriage, funeral, and many other institutions which we have in our country. They all follow their own religious codes. Every religion has a prescription on each one of these ones. marriage to funeral to birth, adoption, property even, and sharing of property between man and woman. All these various issues really in India has been decided by our religion, not by merely a social or political law. So you find this going against gender equality. In gender equality, as gender is equal. In religion, there's a lot and lot of discrimination in every religion between man and woman. So how to reconcile these two? If you offer some uniform civil code, it will not reconcile with the fundamental rights of the country. If you say a uniform civil code as a fundamental right, various religious groups and its leadership is going to protest. It has happened in this country, not once, many times. And we have, for instance, Shabanu case as an example, where Supreme Court went to the extent of upholding the directive principles of state policy's spirit and gave a judgment favoring Shabanu and giving her a maintenance for being separated, by being delegated by the husband. Now, this thing was opposed by the religious people because they thought in Muslim religion, we have other ways of taking care of our women. And this sort of a court-given judgment of a maintenance will not do for us. We will not do it. And whatever they were giving by way of, maintenance was a pittance. It was left to the man to decide what he'll give us as pittance. The husband was a very popular, very prosperous doctor. The wife gets 15 rupees a month or something as the maintenance. So the Supreme Court came out saying, in proportion to the income of the husband, the maintenance should be increased to such and such figure. But the religious people opposed it because it's considered as an interference with the religion. So you have a thing, very genuine type of contradiction, leaving it to the Supreme Court to resolve this. The politicians entered the picture and took the side of the religion rather than the side of the women. With the result, we have a controversy which erupted there. The same thing has come out with Sabarimala. Once again, in Sabarimala case, it is a question of gender equality. To go and worship a god is a right which, according to fundamental rights of India, right to religion, right to worship religion. And that applies as much to men as to women. There's no inequality in this. But then when you apply it, you find lots of temples in this country, or the mosques in this country, or churches in this country have not allowed women to move into it. Many temples did not allow the scheduled caste to go in. And for instance, you have the very famous issue of the Nagpur temple. So you find that the religion has been prohibited, the gender and lower caste, to get into temples and religious worship on equal. There are any number of systems, any number of institutions, any number of practices, any number of discriminations against women in daily life which goes on in the name of religion. Not merely as only a social practice, it's not just a social practice, but it's a social practice which is closely associated with our rituals, our religion, depending on which religion we belong to. All this, in a way, is tremendous handicap for women, tremendous type of discrimination against women, and it prohibits her, prevents her from reaching the highest point of achievement she can reach. So in a way, this goes against the fundamental right of women, goes against the constitutional value of equality. It goes against the right to freedom. It goes against right to free movement. It goes against right to free speech. If you laugh, if you say anything, they'll say, no, religion doesn't believe in the women laughing loud. Doesn't believe in going late and coming late in the evening, doesn't believe in talking to the men. All this is, then they will bring examples. I'm not quoting it because I don't want them to do, but from our religious scriptures, from our rituals, and put against the women, saying this is not allowed for. This in many ways have prevented many of us to move forward and then be free about it, pursuing our professional interests. If you want to do it as a student, higher education particularly, or even in the lower education, you cannot move out after you come to puberty age because it's not allowed in our religion. You have to cover yourself and move around in the society because our religion requires. You can't even look at another person free. So again, right to freedom. And the two together, it ultimately stops women from achieving what she wants to achieve. So that is where, whether you see it from the point of view of the individual women's rights, or you see it from the point of view of national progress, or you want to see from the point of removing the glass ceilings over the women, you find this contradiction is tremendously there. That is why very often the gender studies persons have been extremely critical of our constitution as being very, very patriarchal. When they talk in terms of the directive principles of state policy 15A, where they say nothing will stop the state from adopting measures for the promotion of the good of women and children. Once again, the women studies persons are extremely upset because it connects women with children all the time. One way or other, it's wrong. Or the children are helpless persons. Till they reach a certain stage of adolescence or adulthood, they are dependent. They are not able to exercise any of their freedom. Women are not the same. So comparing women with children and identifying the same means the women are also not treated as adults with freedom of speech as a citizen, but put along with the children. Second thing is the only way women are treated or looked up is as mothers. The only way you talk in terms of the women is as mothers. If this is true, this has begun reflecting in all our policies, particularly in the policy on health. In health, very, very many gender studies persons have pointed out that health treats women not as an individual. Health is not treated as a right. It's not treated as a right of women and brought under the gender equality. There are tremendous amount of discrimination against women on the grounds of health. All the women are not sure. There are many case studies, many surveys which have pointed out that even the families discriminate a lot against women from the point of view of health. The boys are taken up, the boys are spent more money on, the girls' problems are ignored till they become the very important final critical issues. Women are always treated only as a wife or as a mother, and the most important function in the world is procreation. So with the result, any problem connected with women's procreation, productivity, that is taken, that's given importance. The whole health family, health and health relationship is one of family. Women are only treated as members of a family. Women's problems are only familial problems. Women have the most important function of production or reproduction. And so most of the health policies which used to talk in terms of women are those connected to the reproductive function of the women. So that's not the only function of women. There are women who are not married. There are women who marry but have no children. There are women who have become widows without any children. Lot of single women, one way or other, we have. So what happens to them? They're not mothers. So if you're all the time treating women only as mothers, then you are not reaching out to women at all. The women who are not mothers were never dealt with as a problem of a gender policy or gender issue, but just subsumed under general citizen, that's all. And we all know, knowing the patriarchal society, most of the reach out is to men and not to women. Only those policies reach out to women who is in the context of reproduction. Other policies treat women as non-existent, and the families treat them as non-existent and treat it as expensive, try not to worry about them. Very often the surveys which we have done, the parents, including the mother, have said, if the boys are not well, they will take them to the doctor, maybe PHC, maybe to the hospital. maybe to a private doctor. But if the girls are not there well in the villages, they will give them some sort of khada or kashayam, as you call, and treated off right at home, not taken seriously. So this is where we find that the whole value of our constitution in a way has led them into a wrong thinking. If we had been given a fundamental right to health, and if it had been said that gender equality is there, or if we had a separate column in directive principles of state policy only for women, not associate them with children, then the thinking would have been that women are individual citizens. They are not only mothers as the citizens of this country. This has been pointed out again and again and again in very many uh, issues. So even the women's health very often, even the reproductive policies very often for women have come up mainly because it gets associated with general policies, either on population or on AIDS or on any other issue. Women can be the subject of AIDS did not occur to many of us, many of the gender experts or to health experts. It came up much, much later that the impact of the AIDS can be felt on the women also. So women also could be patients of AIDS. It's a man-made disease, but the impact of this has come on the women. So this is where the very many, one can go on giving a various type of examples for this, but it shows how the constitutional structure does not have anything very special for women. There is no gender equality, gender chapters in the constitution, except for this one mention in the entire constitution. The women do not figure anywhere in the constitution. The one in political rights, yes, or right to vote, it belongs to everyone as an equality. Even that, for a very long time, very many countries did not give the right to vote to women. The Indian constitution definitely gave the right to vote for women, and the Indian leaders soon after independence gave the right to free voting, equal voting to women. So we had from the very first general election for the women voting in the elections with the same qualification as the men, with no limitation and no qualification, as we did not put any qualification for right to vote. Many countries have this particular restrictions for a very long time. The universal suffrage for women did not come before the 1930s. We started with gender equality when it comes to right to vote. And it also meant right to stand in the election. It also meant participate in the decision making. But we had to wait for a very, very long time till we had the amendment coming up, constitutional amendment coming up, giving us the reservation in the Panchayat Raj and municipalities, when women could stand for the elections as women and get into the reserved positions for women, so that finally we could see women sitting plenty, that is 1/3, either as members of panchayats or municipal bodies or as their chairpersons. But till that time, since it did not give that specific right and position and reservation, even though the constitutions did not say anything about it, their gender equality, women really did not come up to the final point to call. So we find that not only the constitution has a patriarchal element in it, unknowingly, I'm not saying this is a very great prejudice they had, except in the issue of uniform civil code, and except on the issue of right to property, remarriage, the specific discrimination did not turn up in the constitution. Some of it we could rectify. In 1954, we passed a lot of acts to give women equality or even privileges in the Hindu Code Act. Why did we have a Hindu Code Act and did not have as for other religions? It's mainly because of the uh, pros and cons debate in the constitution, because of the opposition by other particular religions. Hindus also opposed this uniform civil code at that particular point. And with the result, in 1950s, under Jawaharlal Nehru was the Prime Minister and was extremely keen about the Uniform Civil Code, he had to come out separating the Hindus from the others and then pass these three acts, right to property, right to remarriage, and against dowry, and all these various acts which come up because of the Hindu Code Act, which we have. They could separate the Hindus from others, so at least the majority population in India, namely Hindus, could get these rights. But he did not succeed in this because the other religions opposed it. And we could not have a uniform civil code because our own president, the first president of India, opposed the uniform civil code. Even after becoming independent, when Nehru wanted to introduce uniform civil code, just as he got the reservation for SC/ST got introduced, the opposition came very seriously from the president of India. He said, if you do it, I'll veto it. So Nehru didn't want a confrontation with the president, so he allowed it to die. But little later, he reintroduced the same idea in the form of Hindu Code Act. So today the Hindus may not think that they are better than the others. We also had our problems. We overcame it somehow, and we had these freedoms now. But the other religions still continue with what is given in that religion only, whether it's Christianity, Parsis, Muslim, or whomsoever we think in terms of his religion, they all have this gender discrimination. It essentially concerns three important aspects: property, adoption, they cannot adopt the children, and in terms of funeral and other systems, and daily life, various types of rituals. So we find that however much we go further, these religious freedoms in India is not able to be removed because they are in the fundamental rights of our constitution. Now, this has taken big form sometimes, like the Sabarimala case. This is within Hinduism. It is not concerning other religions. Within Hinduism even, you can again practice gender inequality when it comes to right of children, right to religion, when you are preventing women from going to the temples on certain day, on certain temples, or certain days of the month, or certain days in the week, or something like this. We still have a lot of restrictions. There is nothing which religion says it. It is really the rituals which have said it. Who are the benefactors of the religion? Who are the beneficiaries of these rituals? Again, it is the religious heads who are standing by this. That's why Sabarimala becomes extremely important to us. It doesn't matter if a woman can go up or not, the temple. What is important is she's prevented from going. In the month when you have a puberty or 3 day this thing, you cannot perform any puja. You cannot go to any temple. You cannot go to certain portions of the house. What is this? This is a mechanical, health-wise, a physical phenomenon. It has nothing to do with religion. But it is related to religion. It is combined with religion, and then women are prevented for those many days to not attend. And this goes in the professional way. This is where very many professional persons make fun of us, fun of the women. Oh, you will take off 3 days in the month. You will ask for a casual leave. You will take your earned leave. You will not come. No, who says we will not come? All those women who have come up, remember, breaking these customs, breaking these rituals, and somehow overcoming these obstacles and taking it up and coming up. What it means is a little additional type of efforts women have to put in. It doesn't come normally to them. To have a right means you have to fight for it. You cannot just say, okay, the constitution gives me this right, I'll do it. That's not enough. That is necessary, but that is not enough. You still will have to fight against the social inhibitions, and you have to fight against your own family, whether how to overcome this, or somehow or other to take it and do it. So this is precisely where we find that the more you overcome, the more you seem to have problems to face. A lot of them have these problems, and they do face it. It's not that we are not facing it. And so the women's studies over a period of time have begun believing the constitution is not for us, it's for the men. And but gradually we are overcoming that sentiment too, thanks once again to the judicial activism in this country. A lot goes to judicial activism in this country, whether it's a question of Shabanu case, it's not their fault, they gave a judgment, or whether it is recently triple talaq, or whether it is Sabarimalai, there's judiciary using the fundamental rights as well as using the directive principles of state policy as the values in front of them, have been able to, in fact, I'll say that if they don't mind, they've managed to give us a judgment which is the long run better for the women and their rights and their gender equality as such. That's the only persons who have. So what the judiciary has done over a period of time, they have tried to work out. It's true gender equality is important. It's true constitution gives women all the rights that men have. It's true that fundamental rights as well as the preamble as the fundamental rights believe in no discrimination against women. But then the society has to do a lot of this. And the directive principles have come in the way of some, and even has helped us, but fundamental rights have come in the way of implementing. So what the judiciary did was, if one of the judgments says, they used a phenomenon called, a methodology called harmonious treatment. That's the word they used. They did the fundamental rights and the directive constitution of state policy, put them together and brought out the result on the basis of what they called harmonious treatment. So the judges used the way, judges used the tactics, judges found how exactly you can promote gender issues. So as much as the constitution, the judges all
Sorry, Vinita, can you put off your, some of you are keeping your phone unmuted. Please mute it. It is disturbing. Please, Vijay Deep. Yeah, please. Madam, please continue.
Thank you, Mimi. So with the results, this harmonious reconstruction has come out, emerged as a tactic on the part of the judiciary to give us what they have. But at the same time, I do know, and many of us quote it also, there are very many judges whose sworn values or who are not able to do or who don't want to do, they also have come out with a lot of judgments or pronouncements, let's not call it judgment, pronouncements where they have treated women as unequal or lower. We have had the famous examples. I don't want to quote them because they're not pleasant. The Punjab High Court talking about prostitutes have no right. Prostitutes are women. To start with, they were born as girls. To start with, they were Indian constitutions, under the Indian constitution. They were the citizens or are the citizens of India. To treat them as separate from the rest of the country is something, but the judiciary did it. We also have a lot of judicial pronouncements, with or without saying it, where they tend to treat women first as mothers, then as individuals. They take the values from the traditional field, conservative judges, and then apply it to women. The various protective type of legislation which come for women. The protective type of measures, administrative measures for the children, for the girls, adolescents, and for women are all based on one brain, one notion that women require protection, that women are dependent characters, that women on their own have no right, others have to provide them the rights or protect their rights. This particular view is all over India, maybe the world, where the women are still considered as mentally inferior, physically weaker, financially dependent, and physically not able to protect themselves from the hoodlums of the world. So the state has to protect the women. Family has to protect the women. Schools have to protect the women instead of nurturing in them the sense of self-reliance and thereby making them equal to men. So the gender inequality comes up even when you talk in terms of protection. and not in terms of equal. This will take a very long time to go, and there's a lot of rationale for this. A lot of people will, I know, will believe that this is necessary, ma'am, in a world like this, where you have a men behaving like this. We have to protect the women. But then who created those men? Who encouraged those men? It's the same state also has the responsibility of making the men understand the gender equality, gender values, and gender contribution of women, rather than treat them as merely dependent, vulnerable, weak, and not in any position to contribute. The whole notion of women do not work. Women do not contribute to the family. Women do not contribute to the state, and they are merely consumers or not producers. It's an extremely widespread. The whole notion of a housewife is coming out of this particular, and out of that it comes up this whole notion of women being dependent, weak, and not able to produce anything on their own, and so they cannot stand on their own feet. This notion is so widespread, so common, so deeply inherited, but that whether it's policymaker or politicians who do it, members of the legislature or judiciary, or not mere, and the family definitely, and the various social institutions which has this at the bottom of, or the thinking, their policies, their activities, their measures, administrative measures. We must get over this, for which both women are ready to prove this, but men are not ready to accept it. If a woman shows any independence and want to be self-reliant and stand on her feet, there are enormous obstacles for her to do that. It's the obstacles. It's not the facilitations for women to do it. So we have these notions going on and on and on. Finally, I would just take this occasion also to talk about some of the emerging issues which are affecting the women from this point of view of constitution and gender equality. One important thing, the recent emerging issues, is citizenship issue. The citizenship issue which has come up all over India, it has never talked in terms of the women. Women are also citizens. They're only talking in terms of the men. When did they come? When did they go? Who is a migrant? Who is not a? When did women join? When did women not join? These issues are totally dormant in the entire citizenship issue. We have not taken it up at all as a separate issue. Secondly, migration and employment. I know you are going perhaps to have a topic on migration coming up, but this is also important. This is also a policy issue. When you talk in terms of migration, you're only thinking in terms of men. The men also are thinking only of themselves. When they make a walk from somewhere in Maharashtra to somewhere in Bihar or Assam, they are not thinking in terms of whether the woman can walk along with them, children can walk along with them. They made the decision, they will walk. They will leave, and they're leaving, and the others are hanging on to them and coming. Whether the woman is pregnant or not, what is women's health? During the travel, doesn't she have to worry about her menses and other problems? No one talked about that migration problem, and the men led them, women followed them wherever they were. At the end of it, when they're talking in terms of rehabilitation of these migrants, and giving them something, once again, the importance of men come up. It doesn't take much of a significance to women. What type of jobs can they create for women? Migrants is not the focus. What type of jobs can we give to the family is the focus, or the men in the family is the focus. Children, what happens to their education? What happens to their health? No, children are tagged along, their education, schools, everything has been closed, and they go all on and on and on to reach another part. Those who are going to schools are now going to be at home after they reach their end point. No schools are created. Nothing is done to take care of the children. No rehabilitation is done for them particularly. The MNRG gives some amount of work for women, for the very poor women. What about others? Even they may not be able to get it now so much because the men are competing whatever little employment is being generated in the villages where they are reaching. In that competition, women will lose out. Men alone will get whatever they are. So you find that right to livelihood, right to education, employment, the women who had something in the urban centers are now losing completely. They become jobless, they have become incomeless, they now have become totally dependent. Those who were never dependent on the men in the urban side are now becoming dependent on the men in the rural side when they reach their villages. Apart from that, you have all the conservative restrictions on the women when they reach their own villages. Villages are not big freedom giving places. It has all the rituals, traditions, and the family uh, do's and don'ts, which will come on the women when they reach home. So what it has happened is made women not even homemakers, just workers at home, household workers. The other concept which has come up is the corona. How has it affected women? Has the men and women been equally affected by corona? No, I'm not talking about a health problem. Health problem, perhaps women are little less number of patients than men. That's because women don't move out as freely as the men do. So they've not caught perhaps the coronavirus so easily as the men have done it. But then work from home concept, which with great fanfare we have put across during the corona thing, what has been its impact on women? Has anybody done any studies? No. Only recently we are trying to become conscious of it, and we are finding two, three resultants are coming from this work from home concept. Women never always worked from home. This itself is wrong. When it comes to rural side of India or even urban side of India, the one important notion which we wrong is women are dependent non-earners and they don't add to the thing is wrong, because women majority have always worked for money or without money, but they've always worked not merely at home as householders but also in the villages as labor, as agricultural labor or agricultural cultivators in all parts of India. So believing that women, quote and unquote, sit at home is a very, very wrong word to use. Women never sat at home. Even at home, they did a lot of work, but outside also they went and did a lot of work, where most of the work in the villages are family work or not just men's work. Whether it's handicrafts or whether even shops or whether it's agriculture or artistic work, beadi rolling. Beadi rolling has been done mainly by women and children, not by men. Men only carry it and go and give it to the contractor. But the work itself was done only by women. I have done some studies of BD rollers, so I have an idea about it. So now also under Corona, this sort of phenomenon has come up even more. Urban employment, they've lost. Their little income which they used to come by their work at the urban side, they have lost. But what has that done to them now? They all have become just householder. They have become domestic workers. At home or outside, they all have been reduced to domestic workers. And there's a tremendous increase in domestic chores which women are doing. Whatever class they belong to, whatever jobs they may be doing, whether it's white collar or blue collar, they all have been reduced into domestic workers, because all the domestic chores have come on them for one reason or another. Not all man-made, it's corona-made. But even then, the job ultimately impact has been women have become domestic chores. Some of them derive a lot of pleasure in cooking and making sweet dishes and all, desserts and all. But not many, for not too long, they can go on doing it. With the result, people have begun feeling tired and frustrated. And the professional quality, professional excellence is coming down very sharply. The other thing is lack of freedom. When you work in an office or when you go out and work in the field, you are free. You have the right to talk. All the village women will find talk boldly and loudly than the urban women do. That freedom has been removed from urban as well, as because there is no freedom to move around. They've been confined inside the houses, so they've lost that. And jobs are not merely jobs. When you go out and work, It's not just you are going and earning money, it's also freedom to air. You have a free air, you have a relaxation, you have a peer group, you have friends, you share your problems or pleasures with an equal number of women in your office and others. That has gone. So it's almost have coupled up, doubled up the sort of slavery which women were having before. We have all been confined home. So you find that the it adds also an insecurity to women, because when they want to go back, when they can go up, they find they have an insecurity that jobs have been taken away. Men also have to go, women also have to go. There is tremendous competition. The women always have been at the bitter end of receiving salary or receiving jobs. And theirs has been, as all the studies have proved for a very long time, for the same job, women receive less money than the men. When it is coming retrenchment or taking some layoff, doing some layoff, women are the first ones to be thrown out. They are the last one to be hired and the first one to be thrown out. So this corona is creating this sense of insecurity to women, that they will, when the situation opens up or already opened up, they will not be the first ones to be hired. And many of these migrant women, migrant men, the migrant men are returning to the cities, but the families are all asked to stay back. We find on all the cases where they are coming back from UP, Bihar to Delhi and maybe Bombay, their men come back. The women and the children are left behind in the village. So those who are working before in any form, in any industry as a labor, or they have no jobs now. Completely sort of dependent either on Manegra or nothing at all. So you find the last thing about it is, which I want, the corona has increased the domestic violence. Confined in the house, men and women, father-in-law and the other members in the family, you find that domestic violence has tremendously increased. It may be violence in the physical sense of the word. It may be violence in the mental torture as such. But being under the same roof for a long time, with no place to go, confined from morning till evening, the drinking of the men have increased. Those who could have access to drink, or if not, then now they are saying people are even drinking sanitizers. So you find that the drinking has increased, violence has increased, and the women are going through both mental, physical torture and violence within the family. So these are all very, very emerging issues which we are still facing. And all these need not immediately be related to our constitutional structure. No. The constitution cannot do much about it, you may say that. But the same constitution gives right to equality. And it seems that from the point of view of revenue or whatever, all the state governments in India want the first shops to be opened as drinking shops. They're most happy to open the drinking shops first thing, because that gives them tremendous revenue. But what's the consequence? Who is opposing it? Who has opposed all the Arak movement and all in either Andhra or elsewhere in the country? It's the women. Because the impact of this is on women. You confine them to the home, and you then no jobs, as I said, coming up. Corona puts a lot of restriction on movement, and then at the end of it, you go and open your drinking shops. So drinks are coming in a day. On the first day, you should have seen the photographs. People can. I even saw a woman going and buying drinks for the sake of the men. I'm sure she can't be drinking it, not that much. So she's bringing for the family. She is bringing for the men. Patriarchy is making use of women even to buy the drinks with which he will ultimately increase the violence on her. That is the way the states are moving around under various things. For them, everything else is important except women's freedom and gender equality. Constitution directly or indirectly has been supportive of this. That's the thing. When you make the policies, what is your thinking? When you make the judgments, what has been your thinking? This comes from the centuries old feeling that women are dependent and weak and they are not the decision makers in the family or in the country or in administration. However many you may focus one or two women, you may show off IAS they have passed. That doesn't make IAS into a gender equal exam. Why is it in IAS 50% of men and 50% of women are not succeeding? Why is it out of first 10, you have 2 women, Baki 8 men? What is it stopping? So when you begin asking this, so what it becomes is, then in the administration also, your representation of women is so low. Top level of administration, the decision making level of administration, you have very few women. In your political leadership, you have very few women. In your legislature, you have very few women. Constitution says you are equal, but we have never had 50% in the parliament. Even today, where you are the maximum, perhaps we are about 11%, not more than that. We never had. In the ministry, with great difficulty, 1/3 they try to do, and in the cabinet, there will be 1 woman or 2 women. Among the ministry of ministers of state or the council of ministers, you may have about 4 or 5 women. Out of 66, there'll be at the most 6 will be women. The percentage has never gone beyond 10%. Constitution says equal, which means 50%. So that is where, even if the Constitution doesn't say clearly, the Constitution does not do the other part of it very clearly. Or at least it's still not changed the minds of the people as such. The one thing the Constitution's overemphasis on political and under-emphasis on gender has been responsible for not bringing the gender to an equal position in the Constitution as much as politics is in. Political right issues are on the top. So gender is a political issue. Gender is part of politics. Gender is part of the Constitution. Women are part of the citizens of this country. So the Constitution still will have to do it. If the Constitution doesn't do it by way of putting it very clearly, the spirit of the Constitution is with you, making use of the preamble, directive principles of state policy, and a lot of fundamental rights, we can still reach very much where we want to reach, namely gender equality. That is where my plea is, and I'm very happy to talk on this topic, is bring the Constitution to the center of things. Don't treat the Constitution by putting it in a corner. Not merely we are finding the Constitution is being relegated or diluted or contradicted, and people can do whatever they want to do with the Constitution, mainly because majority of even educated Indians, well-to-do Indians, don't know what is the Constitution. Do not stand by the Constitution. Do not assert the Constitution, which belongs to every one of us. If you want these rights, which is given in the fundamental rights or in directive principles or on preamble or elsewhere in the Constitution, we have to not merely stand by these rights, but we have to stand by the constitutional structure. So let us take the two together. The Constitution, its values, in all ways, equality, whether it is directive principles, fundamental rights, or any other equality, we talk in terms of various parts of India, or whether it's federalism or citizenship or any other issue we talk about the Constitution, let us carry the women along. Let's carry the gender along with that and see it from gender point of view. So both Constitution will get strengthened as well as gender equality will get strengthened. That's my plea. So let us not dismiss the Constitution as only the legalistic view, only the judiciary's headache, or when you do the amendment of the Constitution, Parliament's headache. I must say that 90% of members of our Parliament, I'm not very sure, have ever studied Constitution so thoroughly as they should, except the legal-minded ones or the lawyers in the Assembly. So unless we bring the Constitution center and strengthen it, and then strengthen those portions in the Constitution which mentions about or talks about gender equality, both in the letter as well as in the spirit, we will not be able to do gender equality either. So let's do that to get together. Is that fine? Thank you.
Very much. Yeah, it
Madam,
was. Yeah. And there are some questions, ma'am. You can listen to that. Yeah.
Um,
Nandita Madam, thank you for your wonderful presentation. Yeah, we shall bow our head to the sanctity of Constitution. But the present situation is the mockery of the Constitution. Equality Article 14, no discrimination Article 15, equal opportunity Article 16, equal pay for equal work Article 39. They are all the mockery of the present situation. As you said, Parliament, the percentage of women is only 14.5% and workforce is only 23.4%. Unfortunately, the Gender Equality Inequality Index (GII) says that we are in 132 position out of 148 countries. GGP gap Gender Gap Index out of 136 countries we are 101. So basically, as you said, madam, apart from this constitution, we derive our laws. We have to derive the laws from the pronouncements of judges. But unfortunately, as you said, that judges are also not in favor of women. It is very unfortunate. Okay, madam, this is only a observation. That's all. My question here is about the uniform civil code. Why we find equality everywhere? We have every rights equally ever. And finally, what's your opinion about the suffrage?
Dr.
Suffrage.
Gopal, it is
Yes.
not audible. Yeah.
Yeah. Audible, madam?
Can you?
Yeah.
Can you?
what's your,
It is not audible.
Okay.
what
Women's
is it?
suffrage.
What's
Suffrage.
your opinion?
About women's suffrage. SUFFRAGE. And
Mhm. Well, women's suffrage is there's no opinion about it in the sense there are no two opinions about it. And we had it from the very beginning, from 1950 onwards, we have been having it. And today, almost all the countries in the world, except maybe some, I don't want to mention, maybe even Saudi Arabia and others, may not have it. But it is a universally accepted proposal. And I don't think there's any controversy about women's suffrage now. The controversy is at least about century old now, when Britain and the United States, the women had to struggle. I agree with you, and I agree with you particularly the reason too. I forgot to mention it. I didn't want to go into figures, but because I was not very sure about who are all attending this, and the gender equality index has been recently introduced, and that there India is in a very poor show. Maybe sometime the organizers can, I can help them with sending some of this data to you if you are interested. But I thought majority of people are not interested in the data as such. For every one of them, we have a lot of data. So in gender
Please,
inequality or equality
please
and
share, ma'am. Whatever data
inequality,
you want to, please share.
not today, but another time. So I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
You have all of them. So one thing we can do is perhaps before the lecture, maybe some of this data could be sent by me and you can contribute to it. And we can send them as a sort of those who attended the thing before or after, we can send them as a package later on, right? That's one thing if they are interested. Because I'm not one of those who want to go on giving background material to those who are not interested later on, they're going to throw it or not use it. So with the result. But what I'm happy is the gender sensitization which we are doing now is going far beyond just what you used to say. You should treat your sister, woman like a sister. You should do. No, not that level we are moving right now. We have moved in a higher level. So I'm happy the opportunity given by UGC is being well exploited by the Women's Study Centers to bring a lot of and then see the sensitization of the people. In the process, other issues also get highlighted, not merely, as you say, other issues are also getting highlighted, not merely only gender as such. Because gender ultimately has to be fitted into a broader context. If your constitution itself is being relegated or nullified or neglected, then gender also will go along with that. So in order to promote gender equality, you have to promote constitutional equality and the constitutional value as such. So the value of the constitution, treating it as a most fundamental Bible of the country, is something which is required.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
It's a sort of a gender
Questions?
mainstream. Ah.
There are some questions on the chat box. I'll read it out.
Uh-huh.
The constitutional promise of irrespective of sex and gender has
Ah.
not played out well for either women or other genders. In fact,
Mm. Mm.
criminalization of other genders and sexualities
Mm.
has only recently been withdrawn. Would
Yeah.
like to know what
Mm.
constitutional amendments may be required to rectify this historic discrimination triggered by homophobia.
See,
And
the
the other question all about women's reservation bill. Yeah,
humans,
reservation bill. Why it is
conservation.
not yet implemented there in the state assemblies and the parliament? That is one question.
Okay, let me
You are
start.
asked to throw light on that. Two questions. Yeah.
Yes, Manimekal. The constitution which we are talking about is a constitution which was made in 1950. Over a period of time, the constitution evolves itself. A lot of amendments. India is notorious for introducing frequently amendments, more than any other country in the world. A lot of amendments have got added up. And today, when we say constitution, it should be treated as the original constitution plus the amendments. It can't be just treated only by what was formulated in 1950 and introduced on the day of the Republic. If you see like that, and a lot of portions in the Constitution, constitutional practices are introduced not merely by the written Constitution and the written amendments, as we all know as old students, they are also contributed by the judiciary. A lot of acts which have come up was followed the judicial thing. Even if they don't make an act, or a law, the judges use it as a judicial precedence, as you call it. They quote the previous judgments and then use that in order to give a judgment today if they want to. All this put together ultimately become the constitutional framework of India, not merely just the structure which was made in 1950. Okay, thereby the answer to your first question is, now that judiciary has made changes in Article 377 as well as many other issues, we have to take that as almost final unless the Parliament makes a law against it or making law different from it. And so far, the Parliament also has taken it. So now we should believe that our Constitution of India, not a 1950 document, but today as it stands with all these various acts, all these various amendments, all these various judicial pronouncements, is a total framework where it has been accepted, the third gender and others have been accepted, the homophobians and others have been accepted. So we need not believe it is not anymore recognized. We must believe Indian citizenship includes them. When we say men and women, we have to now put the third gender also along with that. It has been in all the government documents. It is now a universally accepted principle. So I think those of us who are happy about this should begin using it all the time rather than men oblique women, wherever we go. He oblique she. Even it took us a very long time. When I was a child, there was no she, it was only he. It has taken us a long time to come out with that change, he oblique she. Now
even now, it is not changing.
Right. So now we have to put he oblique she oblique, whatever word we are using, transgender or third gender or whatever you do, that also should be added everywhere in all the government documents. And I think if anywhere you find it being not followed, go to the court. Now you can go to the court and say that they are wrong in doing documentation like this should be there together. So not all the old documents should be thrown out. They should be able to print out new ones with these changes. So I think in the first question, we don't need on every issue, we don't need an amendment to the Constitution. Because very many universally accepted thing, we can have it as gone. If judicial pronouncements under law has been passed, we can believe it has as much value as the amendment will have. So amendment issue will come up when people don't accept it. Somehow in India, this entire judgment of the Supreme Court, maybe personally people talk about in the drawing rooms opposing it, but in official documents, in official lectures, or wherever we talk, we don't anymore question the judgment of the judiciary about accepting this as the third gender and equally third gender, equal gender. So that's where um, whether it is this issue or 37 issue, Article 377 issue, we have no problem anymore. No judicial, legal problem anymore. It may be still a mental problem. And that mental problem will be overcome when we use it more and more. And we compel others to use it more and more. So the government documents should begin revising their own documentation to include this. Others will follow on their own. As far as the reservation issue of legislature, many of us are tired. The only reason it has not come up still is all those of us who have been fighting for it for the past, I don't know how many years, no, 40 years, asking for more. We did all types of things, more chairs, and all of you have been party to it one way or other. Many of you have taken demonstrations, moved up, walked up, and many other raising slogans, writing articles and all. Somehow it has not come. It's very, very great difficulty due to the tremendous pressure and lobbying done. There are a lot of histories behind it. I'm a part of many of them. I'm knowledgeable about a few of them. It came up to Rajya Sabha. And in Rajya Sabha, we managed to put pressure and it was introduced and passed. It's not dead. Let's remember, the Rajya Sabha, nothing is dead. It's in Lok Sabha that legislations die or lapse and all that. In Rajya Sabha, because Rajya Sabha itself is never dead. 1/3 of membership of Rajya Sabha changes every 2 years. The other 2/3 will go on. So the gaps only are filled. Rajya Sabha is never re-elected as such, as a full body. With the result, Rajya Sabha is not gone. And those which have been introduced in Rajya Sabha alive, because Rajya Sabha is alive, and it is now left only to Lok Sabha to pick it up and pass it. We had periods when we had a maximum support in the Lok Sabha, because we had maximum women who were in Lok Sabha committed to political rights of women. We had it in the 1980s, 90s. We had a lot of women leaders within the parliament and both houses of parliament. Outside the parliament, they used to be participating in all the NGO functions and talk like us. I don't know what happened to them. They are now not coming into the parliament. Those sort of politically active, socially alert, extremely empowered women are no longer getting into the parliament. It's very strange. So I think the past 1 decade, the issue has not come up. The political issues are getting dominant. The gender issues are not there. It's a general issue, general feeling, general atmosphere, and it is very much affecting us also. But there's not the lack of effort, lack of literature, lack of data, statistics, lobbying, pressurizing, seminars. Everything has been done. Morchas have been done. Parliament has been gone into. People have gone inside the parliament and the visitors gallery. From there, they've raised slogans. But we have not succeeded in introducing it in Lok Sabha. There are a lot of manipulations which are done within the Lok Sabha, where the bill gets cutted. It is there from 1992 onwards in the Lok Sabha, but never allowed to come up. Somebody or other, some political party, some leader of a political party is made an agent of, everybody works on him and oppose it. The major three political parties have never opposed it openly. The Congress, BJP, CPM, CPI has never opposed it openly. It's the other small regional parties from where somebody or other gets up and opposes it. Others are quiet. Everybody has a stake in not bringing it forward, because all the men in the parliament are scared, all the political leaders are scared. It is their seat which will go to a woman. They will be deprived for another 5 years or 6 years if it's Rajya Sabha. So that's the reason. That's a real reason. That is the negative reason. The positive reason is they don't want to see more and more women in the parliament. Otherwise, like it happened in Panchayat, they could have accepted here also. They could have brought their wives, their sisters, their mothers-in-law, their mother, anybody they could have brought if they are powerful enough to win the elections. They are not very sure they will win the elections. Also, the nature of your elections is changed so much. It's muscle power and money power. The women are not able to fight it out in the same grounds, the same way in which the men are going to do. And the men are doing it. And that's why the men are also not very confident. The political leaders are also not very confident the women will be able to win the elections, because they don't have muscle power. They don't have money power. Again, they become dependent on the men for muscle and money. If the men are going to make the muscle and the money, they will never. Why should they bring a woman? They can come themselves. So the nature of the elections have become too terrible for women to compete. The men don't want to give up. Men have the power, but they don't want to give it to the woman. And so it's a very vicious thing. Unless you have reservation, women cannot come. Whoever the woman may be. Maybe it's a mother and mother-in-law and grandmother, but no woman can come. On reservation, in order to come, the men will have to bring it, because the majority of MLAs and MPs in parliament in the past so many years are men. If the women are there in the majority, they would have brought. But because the men are the majority in Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, state assemblies, state councils, it will never come. You do the gender sensitization, you do the changed mindset, men mindset improves. If they have a vital interest, they bring their wives. It's not there. If the men are invalidated by a judiciary that he cannot compete in the election, he will bring his wife. If a man dies and is very popular, so his wife will get a ticket. These are the only ways which men are ready to give us the ticket. Right? And the next election comes, this woman is thrown out and somebody else comes in there. Those are temporary jobs.
Yeah, yeah. You have done a lot on this political participation, being political scientist. Okay, thank you, ma'am. I think there are any other questions, Dr. Radhika, on the chat box, because mine was cut and I am back and I could not see the chat box. Any questions now? Is there any other questions, Dr. Radhika?
1 second, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Yeah. No. So shall we
No.
close? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, ma'am.
thanks a lot,
Okay.
Manimekhale, not merely for calling me. That's fine enough. I'm very happy
Yeah.
about it. But for
There is a
organizing such webinar, again
yeah.
and again, and thanking you for that, because you have been a very active person behind it. You are
Thank you,
keeping
ma'am.
the BBC flag up, and you're also keeping the gender studies flag up. You're also
Sure.
keeping the capacity building flag up.
Yeah, yeah, very much, very much. Yeah. And there is a formal vote of thanks. Before that, I just thank Madam for spending at least around 1.5 hours with us without any slag, given her, what I should say, in the noon. I can't say that she is old, she is young, relatively speaking,
I
in
don't
terms
know
of
the age.
whatever the delivery.
Not after the age, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And it was very systematic, and we were able to get, on the one hand, what is actually the constitution, and also you had brought these emerging issues, and that has given us a lot of insight for people and the youngsters to work forward. So let us see, and that is the kind of insight you have given. And there is Madam Dhanasili, who will be formally proposing the vote of thanks. Dr. Dhanasili, Ms. Dhanasili, please.
Good evening, ma'am. On behalf of the Women's Studies Department, Bharathidasan University, Trichy, and on behalf of the Madurai Kamaraj University Women's Studies Center, I am privileged to thank Madam Nandita Kaushik, the former
No.
director.
Susheela Kaushik.
And
She's
another,
using
and
she's
the
using
laptop
her
is 25.
grandsons, yeah,
Oh, I see.
granddaughters.
I
Yeah.
see. Dr. Susheela Kaushik, I was confused. So, Dr. Susheela Kaushik, the former director, Center for Women's Studies, University, Delhi University, is thank COVID-19, ma'am. It's such a pleasure and a privilege to hear you, ma'am. You were so excellent, and your talk was so lucid, systematic, and informative. And you have told us clearly that being a citizen of India, we are all guaranteed with the equal rights, the fundamental rights, 32 fundamental rights, and you have explained that these rights cannot be revoked since we are women or cannot be violated. And you also explained how the directive principles and state policies are how they are used in the judgments and what are they, how they are related to our own rights in states. And you have also explained how it is not possible for a country with multiple languages, culture, and religion to have a uniform civil code. And you also pointed out how the religious rituals and the culture are holding back the rights of women, referring to the Shabanu judgment and the Sabrimala, the women's allowed
Issue.
to go to Sabrimala issue. So this was very, very clear for us, and you have told us that clearly that to have a right, you have to fight. To have a right, you have to fight, and you have also appreciated the judicial activism going on, and see how women see this as gender studies, especially see this constitution as anti-women, not favorable to women. But it is not so. We have to study the constitution and we have to assert our rights. So thank you so much, madam. And also I thank Dr. Manimegale and Dr. All the
Radhika,
team,
Dr. Radhika,
Dr.
Dr.
Radhika,
Radhika.
Dr. Radhika, and all the teams behind this, they are finding beautiful topics and also eminent persons throughout the world to the sessions we are having. We are really benefited by all these sessions. On behalf of both the universities, I am thanking you, madam, as a student of Bharathidasan University. Thank you so much, madam.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Dhanasili.
Thank you,
And
madam. Thank you, madam.
yeah,
Thank you, ma'am.
okay. Okay, ma'am. Bye. You could see
Bye.
us?
Thank you, madam.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take leave. Please take rest. Bye, Radhika.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye, ma'am.
Yeah. See you tomorrow. I mean, day
Okay,
after.
bye.
Sorry, I have wrongly communicated there is tomorrow session by mistake. Tomorrow is a Sunday. I didn't realize.
Okay, yes,
So
ma'am.
Monday you
No
have. Yeah.
sessions. No
Yeah.
sessions
Thank.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. Last
Thank
week
you.
we had Dr. Kamala Bashin, so we had the session.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, I didn't realize that tomorrow is Sunday. So I thought
Oh,
I was telling, oh, yes, yes, there is class. But
okay.
finally I
Okay,
realized that
madam.
tomorrow is a Sunday. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Bye to
madam.
all.
Being
Yeah,
so eminent
Ma'am.
persons. Thank you so much,
yeah.
madam.
Bye, bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye, ma'am.